The village lay nestled in the valley, thatched roofs glistening with hoarfrost as dawn broke over the mountains. Sean rested his steaming mug on the woodpile next to the door, gazing out over the gently waving fields of Umbarana. Reaching a hand under his heavy fleece jacket, Sean pulled a blue stone pendant on a leather cord from beneath his shirt. Muttering a familiar phrase, he felt the old tingle in his palm as the stone warmed. Azure light spilled between his fingers, and for a moment, the small cottage and its dooryard were engulfed in a shimmering field of azure light. Turning in a circle, Sean inspected the glittering dome that enveloped his home, noting a hazy shimmer in the south corner of the orchard. The blue light faded as Sean returned the pendant to its accustomed resting place beneath his shirt. The flash of scythe blades across the valley signaled that the reapers had begun their day's work. The sight spurred Sean into action. Picking up his mug, he wandered in the direction of the barn, savouring these quiet minutes of peace before the day's work began. An hour later, the chickens fed, the cow milked, and the hog slopped out. Sean sat down at the big, well-scrubbed kitchen table. Mannix slid a steaming plate in front of him, piled high with eggs, ham, and anna porridge. Sean beamed at his husband, tucking into the food with gusto as Mannix sat down beside him. "Gonna tackle that back fence today. Need to get it fixed before winter. The walls back there need tending if we don't want wild dogs in with the chickens this winter," Sean said between bites. Mannix nodded, swallowing his own portion. "Let me know if you need a hand. I'll be back there getting the apples in anyways. Can you bring in some mint while you're about it? Lisa Biddle's youngest had that stomach bug last week and used up a good deal of my supply." "Sure thing. More tea?" Mannix said, getting up from the table to ladle a generous portion of honey into his last stoneware mug. "Yes, please," Sean replied, holding out his own mug. "Come on, you son of a..." Sean grunted, as he levered the new fence post into place. The post was a heavy, cumbersome thing, and the walls on it had to be aligned just so, or the working would fail. Sean knew he could call Mannix, and the two of them would have this done in moments, but his husband had been working all morning too, and Sean didn't want to be a bother. It took only a couple minutes, and a few more obscenities to fill in the hole around the now upright post. The nails had been driven part of the way through the railing, so it was easy enough to stick them to the new post and drive them home with a mallet. Sean leaned against the post, wiping sweat from his brow. Now that the new post was in, it was the work of a moment to fish the blue stone pendant from out of his shirt and recite the words his grandmother had taught him. The stone flashed, and the intricate signal carved into the top of the post glowed in response, the other fence posts giving off light of their own. Sean nodded in satisfaction and picked up his tools to return them to the barn. Sean smiled as he returned his post holder to his peg in the workshop. On his workbench was a bundle of French mint, while a plate of cold chicken and a tin mug of mint tea warmed on the small forge. Sean whistled as he prepared the tinctures, chopping the fresh mint finely and adding dried herbs from the bundles hanging from the rafters. The jug of Anar spirits was half empty when he began adding it to the jars, and Sean made a mental note to pay a visit to Cullen Morton and see if his still had produced any surplus recently. It was a long shot this close to Harvest Festival. Most of the spirits would be spoken for, but Cullen usually kept a bottle or two aside for him after Sean had cured his cow a few years back. Sean's idle musing was cut short as he screwed the last jar of top into place. An indistinct voice came from the dooryard, sounding out with the sure notes of panic. Sean went out the door to see Mannix trying to calm down a young boy of 6 or 7 summers, whose hurried agitation made his words incomprehensible. Sean moved quickly across the dooryard, trying to place the boy. He looked like one of the Macreadys. Fallon. Striding across the dooryard, Sean knelt down beside the tearful child, sobbing in Mannix's arms. "What ails you, Fallon? What is it?"
Afton, he was with the harvesters this year. Please, Cammy's hurt bad."
Fallon gasped out between sobs. "All right, lad, I'll go. Which foot were they in?" Sean said, in his gentlest voice, mentally compiling a list of the things he would need.
"South,"
came the broken answer. Sean stood and spoke to Mannix. "I'm headed now. Here's the cart and follow me once the little one calms down. We may have to move Afton." Mannix nodded as Sean turned back to the barn. Grabbing the battered leather satchel that hung on his hook over the workbench, Sean set off through the woods. Sean and Mannix's homestead sat in the foothills on the western end of the valley. Getting to the south fields along the road that gently wound among the small, isolated cottages at this end of the valley would take over an hour. Cutting through the tangled brush of the forest he had played and hunted in all his life took less than half the time. So it was only about 20 minutes later that Sean emerged from the tree line to see a huddle of men at the far side of the field. Sean moved quickly through the rows of Anna maneuvering around the other men, whose rhythmic side strokes paused momentarily at the cunning man's passage. Sean didn't blame them for getting on with their work. This harvest meant food for the winter. However badly the kid was hurt, the harvest needed to be brought in before the heavy frost, or they and their families would go hungry in the cold months. Sean had never seen Tegan McCready in such a state. The big man had worn the same stoic countenance at his own wedding and his mother's funeral, but clearly the feeling of helpless dread at his son's injury had cut him to the quick. Sean spared a moment to rest his hand on the big man's arm and murmur some words of encouragement before leaning down to examine Afton. The wound was bad, a side slash across his upper thigh. Tegan explained that the implement had been a little big for the boy, and he had lost hold of it when he tripped. The man had acted quickly, clenching his belt across the wound and sending Fallon to fetch Sean. This action had saved the boy's life. The wound was deep, and even with the makeshift tourniquet, the boy was bleeding badly. Even as he sorted through his bag, Sean knew that no ordinary means could save Afton's leg. With this in mind, Sean pulled a small, strange book from his bag. The pages were hard and flexible. No pen could mark them, and no water could damage them. The book was ancient, a relic that had been passed down with a blue stone pendant through Sean's family for longer than any could guess. Thumbing through the odd pages, Sean found the passage his grandmother had first shown him years ago. The incantation was long and complex, requiring several ingredients from Sean's bag. Sean laid the required reagents on the ground in a circle around the boy, grasped the pendant in one hand and began chanting. The pendant fled to life in Sean's hand, as a blue haze formed in the air above Afton. A swirling cerulean mist that descended upon the child. The other men backed away in fear, every eye in the field fixed on the cunning man and his working. Sean continued chanting, hiding his own concern behind a mask of cool detachment. As the chant ended and the mist lifted, Sean noted that the reagents were gone, consumed by the working, but Afton was whole once more. Sean examined the cut, probing the flawless skin, and talking to Afton, who responded woozily but coherently, before dosing the boy with a sleeping draught. "He needs sleep," Sean said to Tegan, "and plenty of good food when he wakes, but he'll be fine, and he'll keep the leg." It took Tegan several minutes to respond, opening and closing his mouth several times, before his voice would do as it was bid. "You'll stay for supper, of course," was Tegan's reply, raising his hand to forestall any argument, saying, "Kathleen will have my hide if you don't." Sean nodded in assent, and went to wait by the road for Max in the cart. As he walked, Sean looked down at the book he had gotten from his grandmother. He didn't really understand the power it commanded, only that those powers came when he called, and that today it had saved the little boy's life. As he walked, Sean looked again at the cover of the book, and the strange words on its cover. Terran Space Command, Department of Colonization, Operation and Maintenance Manual, Colonial Pattern Nanite Swarm.